Brian McClair had a career full of trophies and success, but beneath all that glory was something darker. One player hated him so much that years later he still spoke about their feud with real anger. McClair won league titles, cups, and individual awards, but he also made enemies everywhere he went. This was not just about football rivalries. This was about a man who refused to fit in, who studied mathematics while playing professionally, and who wrote revealing stories about his teammates. His nickname was Choccy, a playful name that came from chocolate eclair, but there was nothing sweet about the battles he fought throughout his career. 4 people in particular clashed with McClair in ways that defined his entire professional life, and these conflicts were not accidents. They were the result of a footballer who thought differently and challenged everyone around him. McClair started his career at Aston Villa in 1980 as a young player full of potential. English football back then demanded complete dedication from young players. You were expected to eat, sleep, and breathe football with no distractions. But McClair was different. He applied to study mathematics at the University of Glasgow because he wanted a backup plan in case football did not work out. To him, this was sensible thinking. To his manager Ron Saunders, this was betrayal. Saunders had just won the league title with Villa, and he had no patience for players who looked beyond football. When Saunders found out about the university application, he called McClair into his office, and the conversation was brief and brutal. Saunders told him that if he wanted to go to university, he could leave the club immediately. The exact words were harsh and left no room for discussion. McClair was kicked out of Aston Villa just for applying to study. This was the first major conflict of his career, and it taught him that football did not respect intellectual ambition. But here is what made McClair special. After leaving Villa, he joined Motherwell in 1981 and actually did both. He played professional football while studying mathematics at the University of Glasgow. He proved that he could succeed in both areas. In 1983, Celtic signed him, and he decided to focus fully on football. His time at Celtic brought him the Scottish Cup in 1985 and the Scottish League in 1986. In 1987, he scored 35 goals and won both the Scottish Football Writers' Player of the Year and the Scottish Players' Player of the Year awards. He had proven Ron Saunders completely wrong. Now, before we continue with the rest of his story, think about this for a second. Have you ever been told you could not do 2 things at once? That you had to choose one path and forget everything else? Drop a comment below and tell us about a time when someone doubted your ability to balance different parts of your life. And if you are enjoying this story so far, hit that subscribe button because we have 3 more explosive conflicts to cover. During his successful years at Celtic, McClair developed another enemy. But this one was not a person, it was the entire Scottish officiating system. McClair publicly blamed referees for costing Celtic 2 League Cup finals. He was not just complaining like a regular fan. He gave specific details about what went wrong. In the 1984 League Cup final, Celtic lost to Rangers, who won the match with a score of 3-2. McClair claimed that Rangers were given 2 soft penalties that should never have been awarded. 2 years later, in 1986, Celtic lost another League Cup final, and McClair blamed this one on a bad referee and poor linesman. He said the officials caused Celtic to lose control of the match, which led to 2 Celtic players being sent off. McClair called these results an injustice and said that players like his teammate Shepherd lost out on trophies they deserved. He even asked who would compensate these players for what was taken from them. This was not just anger talking. This was McClair using his analytical mind to criticize a system he thought was broken. His complaints about Scottish referees stayed with him for decades. Even in recent discussions about video assistant referee technology, McClair brought up those old matches to prove that bad officiating had always been a problem in Scottish football. What makes this conflict interesting is what happened years later. In 2015, McClair was appointed as the National Performance Director of the Scottish FA, the same organisation that oversaw the referees he had criticised for so long. The critic became part of the system. However, his time in that role only lasted 1 year. He left in July 2016. This short period suggests that changing football from the inside was harder than criticising it from the the outside. But the most personal and violent conflict of his career was still to come. When McClair moved to Manchester United in 1987, he entered one of the most intense rivalries in English football. Manchester United versus Arsenal was already a fierce competition, but McClair made it personal, with one Arsenal player in particular. Nigel Winterburn was a fullback for Arsenal, and in 1988, these two men became enemies. It happened during an FA Cup match that Arsenal won with a score of 2-1. In the final moments of the game, McClair stepped up to take a penalty that could have earned United a replay. He missed. Arsenal won, and Nigel Winterburn decided to mock him publicly. Winterburn taunted McClair right there on the pitch, making fun of his failure in front of everyone. This humiliation stuck with McClair and his teammates. They did not forget. 2 years passed. McClair waited. Then, on the 20th of October 1990, Manchester United played Arsenal at Old Trafford. The referee was Keith Hackett. During the match, Winterburn made a bad tackle on United fullback Dennis Irwin. Irwin reacted by kicking out at Winterburn, but McClair saw his chance. He immediately joined in and also kicked Winterburn. This was not about defending his teammate. This was revenge for what happened 2 years earlier. The situation exploded into chaos, and as Limpar, a Swedish player for Arsenal, appeared to punch McClair. Within seconds, every player on the pitch, except Arsenal goalkeeper David Seaman, was involved in fighting. This was a 21-man brawl, one of the biggest fights in English football history. Referee Keith Hackett let the players continue and only gave yellow cards to Winterburn and Limpar during the match. The Football Association had to step in after the match because the violence was so serious. Both clubs were fined £50,000 each, a huge amount of money back then. But the punishment went further. The FA did something very rare in English top-flight football. They deducted points from both teams. Manchester United lost 1 point. Arsenal lost 2 points, because they had also been involved in a previous fight with Norwich City. The fact that McClair waited 2 full years to get his revenge shows how deep this hatred ran. He did not forget what Winterburn did to him, and when the opportunity came, he took it. This was not just a rivalry between clubs. This was personal, and it became one of the defining moments of the Manchester United versus Arsenal feud. The fourth and final major conflict in his career was with the most important person at Manchester United. Sir Alex Ferguson was the manager who built United into one of the greatest clubs in the world, and McClair played a big part in those early successful years. But their relationship was complicated. Ferguson was famous for something called the hairdryer treatment. This was when he would scream at players who made mistakes, getting so close to their faces that it felt like a hairdryer blowing hot air at them. McClair received this treatment multiple times, sometimes for mistakes he made years earlier. Ferguson never forgot errors, and he made sure his players knew it. The main problem between McClair and Ferguson was that McClair refused to keep quiet about what happened inside the team. He wrote columns for the official Manchester United Club magazine, where he told revealing stories about the dressing room. Later, he published a book called Odd Man Out, which was released in 1997 and updated in 1998. This was his personal diary from his time as a player. In an environment where Ferguson controlled everything and demanded total loyalty, a player writing openly about internal team matters was a direct challenge to the manager's authority. Ferguson built his success on keeping everything private and maintaining complete control over his squad. But here is the interesting part. Ferguson tolerated this from McClair in a way that Ron Saunders never would have. Saunders kicked McClair out immediately for just applying to university. Ferguson, despite being angry about the writing and despite giving McClair the hairdryer treatment many times, recognised something valuable in him. Ferguson understood that McClair's intelligence and independent thinking made him useful, even if it was occasionally inconvenient. The proof of their strong relationship came after McClair retired as a player. In 1999, Ferguson brought him back to Old Trafford as a youth team coach. Then, from 2006 to 2015, McClair served as Youth Academy Director, overseeing 150 children aged 9 to 18. He worked with important staff members like Paul McGuinness and helped continue United's tradition of developing young talent. This role showed that despite their conflicts, Ferguson trusted McClair completely. McClair spent nearly a decade in one of the most important important positions at the club, shaping the next generation of Manchester United players. The relationship between these two men was never simple or easy, but it was built on mutual respect. Ferguson saw past the intellectual challenges and the public writing because he valued what McClair brought to the team. Unlike Saunders, who only saw disloyalty, Ferguson saw potential. So what do all these conflicts tell us about Brian McClair? They show us a man who never fit the traditional mold of a footballer. He studied mathematics while playing professionally. He publicly criticised the Scottish football establishment for years. He held a personal grudge for 2 years before violently settling the score. He challenged his manager's authority by writing openly about team secrets. Every single conflict came from the same source: his refusal to just be a footballer and nothing else. He wanted to think, to analyse, to question, and to express himself. Football in the 1980s and 1990s did not always welcome that kind of independence, but McClair succeeded anyway. He won 4 Premier League titles and 2 FA Cups with Manchester United. He won the Scottish League and Scottish Cup with Celtic. He was named Player of the Year in Scotland. He later became a youth academy director and even worked as national performance director for the Scottish FA, trying to fix the very system he had criticised. His career proves that you can challenge authority, make enemies, and still achieve great things if you stay true to who you are. The story of Brian McClair is not just about football, it is about a person who refused to be put in a box, who fought against people and systems that tried to limit him, and who proved that being different can be a strength. From the philosophical battle with Ron Saunders to the institutional fight with Scottish referees, from the physical war with Nigel Winterburn to the hierarchical dance with Sir Alex Ferguson, McClair navigated every conflict with the same stubborn intelligence that made him special. Now here is a question for you. Which of these 4 conflicts do you think defined Brian McClair the most? Was it the early rejection from Ron Saunders that set him on his path? The long-running criticism of Scottish officials that showed his principles, the explosive revenge against Nigel Winterburn that revealed his competitive fire, or the complicated relationship with Sir Alex Ferguson that proved he could work within the system while still being himself? Drop your answer in the comments below and let us know what you think. And if this story showed you a side of football history you had never seen before, make sure you are subscribed because we have plenty more stories like this coming your way.